A news report from the Associated Press posted today has stated that most people in this country view the war in Iraq as a separate conflict from the war on terror, their polling indicates. Shocking. Shocking. President Bush has described Iraq as the central battlefield in the war on terror in several speeches, and noted that terrorist leaders have said fighting the U.S. and Iraq is critical to their strategy. Well, what terrorist leaders, except for a few clerics here and there who call for the fatwa? Al-Qaeda in Iraq? Let me give you a little history on AQ in Iraq. First of all, it's a propagandist made-up word, and I'll explain that later. The former leader of AQ was Abu Musab al-Zakari. You may remember him because he was killed like 2 months ago or something. His name was brought up as the central link between Saddam Hussein and the Al-Qaeda network by Colin Powell in his now infamous addressing of the UN Security Council, attempting to justify invading Iraq, which by now we know everything he said was complete nonsense. Zakari did plug into the Al-Qaeda network in Afghanistan during the U.S.-funded fighting against the Soviets in the early 80s, the proxy war that ultimately pissed bin Laden off at the U.S. in the first place because of our foreign policy. From there, his connection fades. He was imprisoned in Jordan for 7 years, emerging from his incarceration as a full-blown radical. His original plan was to overthrow the government of Jordan. He was eventually smoked out of the country and sentenced to death in absentia. Zakari allegedly ran a semi-independent camp on the border between Afghanistan and Iraq, teaching his students how to use poisons and chemical weapons in terrorist attacks. After the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, Zakari had to get out of Dodge. According to Colin Powell, that's when the trouble began. After traveling to Iran for a while, intelligence officials essentially forgot about him, until he traveled to Iraq sometime in 2002, and began associating with Ansar al-Islam, a relatively harmless group of 600 to 800 Iraqi Kurds whose stated goal was to succeed from Saddam's Iraq so that its tiny, ethnically exclusive clan could go off and just basically live in peace. Of course, Colin saw that differently. He deemed Ansar al-Islam the vital link, or in his words, sinister nexus between Iraq and the Al-Qaeda terrorist network, a nexus that combines classic terrorist organizations and modern methods of murder. When bin Laden and his posse were forced to move to the Afghani-Pakistani border, their interest in Ansar al-Islam faded, whereas before they had used them sparingly as a strategic location relative to Afghanistan. Zakari received medical treatment in Baghdad at one point. This was the correlation between Iraq and Al-Qaeda, a medical bill. In fact, the consistencies of this story are murky, considering that supposedly he had a leg amputated there. However, at the time of his death, his legs seem to be there, unless Baghdad doctors are really effing good. It can be noted also that the Kurds aforementioned are the ones Saddam gassed back in the 80s with the chemical weapons we gave him, and that Osama bin Laden has, numerous times, publicly dissed Saddam. They disagree on essentially everything, except to wipe out Israel and get the U.S. the hell out of the Middle East. Another side note, now that the democratically elected government of Iraq is moving towards Sharia law, the days of women driving cars and getting a moderate education are essentially over, something Saddam would be unhappy about. Women were allowed to do quite a few things in Iraq, which was actually a major point of contention between him and Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden didn't think he was a very good Muslim. In any case, Iraq actually put out some very good female doctors. Male doctors too, good educational system. Seems to me, in light of these facts, if anything, Al-Qaeda's intentions involved, at the most, assisting the Kurds in attacking Saddam, or in the least, defending themselves against him. No doubt the attention to Zakari gave him the cult of personality status, and in his own right did in fact lead Al-Qaeda in Iraq after the invasion. But Al-Qaeda proper had essentially nothing to do with this. There are reports of Zakari calling Osama for reinforcements, but these are just hearsay. P.S. Ramzi Youssef, original mastermind behind 9/11 as shown in my Bullet the Blue Sky video, had a car accident in New Jersey in 1993, the same year he bombed the World Trade Center for the first time. Does the medical attention he received qualify as harboring a terrorist right here in America? I think not. But according to U.S. intelligence logic, it is concrete war-worthy proof. Who's up for launching a shock and awe preemptive military action against New Jersey and deposing its tyrannical leader? I doubt he held Ramsey's hand while they put the Band-Aids on. So, no, we shouldn't attack New Jersey.